Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the Anowon deck toolkit and the cards inside it. So, let's get into it. The Anowon deck toolkit is going to come with 4 cards. There is a mythic in the bundle, which is Anowon the Ruin Thief. Anowon is 14 mana for a 3/5. It's a vampire rogue. And while it's on the battlefield, your rogue creatures get +2/+2. Then it has, when a rogue creature you control deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, destroy the top X cards of your opponent's library and draw a card, where X is the damage dealt that way. So, however much damage your rogues do to your opponent, that's how many cards get milled from their library. There are also 3 rares that are going to come with the bundle in the form of Enigma Thief, Whisper Steel Dagger, and Crypt of Agadeem. Now, of the 3 rares, Crypt of Agadeem is definitely the best of the 3. It's a phenomenal card. It's a card that you absolutely are going to want to have in your collection, either by getting this bundle or by later booster crafting to try and pick it up. It's in the same family as Valakut and Emeria in terms of being a land that's going to convert 3 to 1 color and then have an additional bonus effect. Crypt of Agadeem's bonus effect is going to have landfall black. The first black card in your hand gains X mana, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. I've found that the landfall black really, it's not like it doesn't trigger all that often unless you're running specifically a graveyard deck, preferably something like Liliana Death's Majesty. But for the most part, you're just using it for the convert 3 gems to black. That being said, it's still a phenomenal card. It's great. It's amazing, actually, but it's not going to get quite as much usefulness out of the landfall portion, probably, as you might have been thinking when you were considering using the card. The next one, Enigma Thief, is another really good card. It's 20 mana for a 7/7. When a rogue creature you control attacks, if this card is in your hand, it gains 4 mana. And then, when this creature enters the battlefield, if your opponent has 5 or less cards in hand, return target opposing creature to their hand. Then, if they still have 5 or less cards in their hand, you are going to repeat their process and return a non-land support to your opponent's hand. Now, Enigma Thief happens to be a rogue itself, as is Anowon, meaning that anytime an Enigma Thief or an Anowon or any other rogue you have attacks, this thing gets mana. It winds up being really easy to play an Enigma Thief once you've got other rogues down, and since it has a control ability, it works really well with the whole idea of making a rogue sub-theme deck. Even without the whole rogue thing, that you've got a 7/7 flyer that is going to be able to make subsequent copies cheaper and then bounces both creatures and lands is pretty good. I would say that this card alone would be an absolute must-have, and everyone who is willing to get the bundle should get the bundle. If it didn't have that, if opponent has 5 or less cards in their hand portion, if it was just an automatic bounce, just given that blue doesn't have a whole lot of removal at its disposal right now. But even as it is, Enigma Thief is a very well balanced and decent card. The final card in the bundle is Whisper Steel Dagger. It's 15 mana. It's got this whole equip 3, so whenever a creature you control attacks, it gains 3 mana. And when your first creature attacks, you may pick one of the first 3 creature cards from your opponent's graveyard and then fetch it and give it half of its mana. And then while Whisper Steel Dagger is on the board, your first creature gets +4/+0. Now, if you know much about my playstyle, you've probably heard me say this 1,000 times. I don't personally like playing with my opponent's cards. So Whisper Steel Dagger is kind of just like an added card to me for this particular bundle. However, I know a lot of people do really enjoy that. So if you're the type of person who does enjoy playing with your opponent's cards, then you will get a lot of fun out of Whisper Steel Dagger, especially with the way that the rest of the bundle works, given that Anowon and the Enigma Thief are both going to be tossing cards into your opponent's graveyard once Anowon comes down. So there will definitely be creatures for you to steal. So I've got a whole bunch of gameplay with this bundle. The first set of gameplay is going to be with all the cards together, and then it's going to be using Anowon in what I think is the best or most optimal way to use Anowon Skywalker here. So before I get into that gameplay, a really quick shout out, big thank you to Octagon for hooking me up with this bundle so I could make this video for you guys. So let's go ahead and check out that gameplay. So in this first match, I'm using the whole bundle together. And so I'm running the Escape to the Wilds to just try and get some mana generation going. I've got this early Whisper Steel Dagger, so I can start going ahead and trying to charge that. I'm using Bolas number 2. Bolas number 2 is my favorite of the Bolosses. My third rogue in the deck is Zareth-san. It gives me more of a feel for what all of this bundle is trying to do. And then Zareth-san also has the next highest power for a rogue creature. So the Castle Locthwain is going to help me draw cards. Shadow Spear is going to give me some life back from these pings that I'm going to be doing to myself from the Castle Locthwains. And so getting an early Zareth-san is going to be pretty nice. Now I'm throwing away that one Whisper Steel Dagger because I just drew another one. So since I've already got one for sure, I might as well just toss the one that doesn't have any mana attached to it and then go from there. Now I've got a potential landfall on the bottom with red. I'm going to take it. And then I'm going to play Zareth-san. Now, when Zareth-san comes down, you're going to immediately notice that when Zareth-san attacks, because Zareth-san has haste, that the Enigma Thief in my hand is going to start gaining mana because of the way that Enigma Thief works. Now, I'm going to go ahead, toss those cards from my hand so that I can draw 2 and have them both gain half of their mana. And then very fortunately, we drew into the Whisper Silk Dagger. Not Whisper Silk Dagger. Yeah, Whisper Steel Dagger. So when Zareth-san attacks, you're going to see it also trigger the equip here too. So that little like sword that flashed and that little turquoise light that you see on the left is signifying that the Whisper Steel Dagger has gained mana from something attacking. And then getting Anowon there, or as I'm going to call him, Anowon Skywalker, is just like kind of perfect because then that's the last piece of the bundle along with the gem converter that we've already got down. So we're going to start dumping a whole bunch of things into our opponent's graveyard now. So 15 cards just got dumped into Nahiri's graveyard. You saw that little 15 pop up by her little health after the Zareth-san hit Nahiri. And so that means that Zareth-san and the Whisper Steel Dagger are going to be able to start pulling things from my opponent's graveyard for free for me. Now, my opponent playing a creature here is pretty useful. It's going to mean that we can definitely go ahead and use the Enigma Thief to bounce it. Unfortunately, the Enigma Thief is not going to bounce my opponent's Vanguard, so my opponent's only support on the battlefield at this time is, well, if they've also got a land, right? So they've got the land and the Vanguard. So the Enigma Thief is going to go ahead and bounce the creature, and you'll see that both of my opponent's supports remain. But we get the Whisper Steel Dagger, we attack. I can take things from my opponent's graveyard here, so I'm going to go ahead and take my opponent's first creatures just to show how that works. And then I'm going to have Zareth-san give me that Pack Beast, which actually winds up coming super in handy this match, by the way. Like, I would not have expected it to come in as handy as it did, but it really did. So I'm getting a whole bunch of black gem conversion here. That's one of the wonderful things about Crypt of Agadim and just sort of all the gem conversion that we have at our disposal. And then here's where you're seeing the Pack Beast come into play. So I use my second ability, and then it's going to convert those gems to black, which winds up letting me play like my entire hand, which is super, super sweet. So here we've got all the different pieces of the bundle in play. And so you'll see that we're just whittling our opponent's health down. We're dumping a whole bunch of cards into the graveyard. I'm not going to be taking any creatures from my opponent. I've got a full hand, so it's not going to do anything. I'm going to take another Pack Beast just to reinforce the one that I have. And then you'll see that Nahiri's got a whole bunch of cards in her graveyard. She's got 60 cards in her graveyard now. So that's, or sorry, excuse me, 65. Wow, great job counting, buddy. But yeah, so this particular bundle is fantastic at dumping a whole bunch of cards into your opponent's graveyard. As you can see, the only thing is that there really aren't too many ways of doing things with all those cards in the graveyard right now. So what you're going to see next after this particular match is I'm going to be running the Anowon with Angrath, which I feel like is kind of the best way of running Anowon. I've tried running Anowon with Angrath. I've tried running Anowon with Kaya. I've tried running Anowon in a number of different ways. Another one that was actually pretty interesting to me was with Maddening Cacophony, which is a kicker spell from Zendikar Rising that is going to give you loyalty equal to the number of spells in your opponent's graveyard, which means that it's basically like a free 30 loyalty for using it when you're using all this stuff together. But like the bundle, like it all works very well together. So it's kind of one of those nice little bundles where everything in the bundle helps itself out. It's just that nothing independently is like like game-breakingly strong, apart from the fact that Nahiri ends with like 100 cards in her graveyard. So let's go ahead and jump to Angrath now. So here we're going to have 2 matches with Angrath. And so with Angrath, this is the sweet stuff, right? Because as you can see from Angrath's ability, it says the third ability, Fiery Demise, is going to make it so that whenever a card enters our opponent's graveyard from anywhere, we deal 6 damage to our opponent. Meaning that for each 1 damage that any of our rogues do with this, that each 1 damage is actually going to be times 6. So it makes it so that all of our rogues basically do times 6 damage. Now for the other 2 rogues that I'm pairing here with Anowon, I'm using Soaring Thought Thief and Black Bloom Rogue. I'm using these 2 just because they're uncommons, and so I think it's more likely that more of you will have them. So that makes this a deck that I think more of you would be able to build and try out than if I was just running more of a mythic heavy deck and using Zareth's again, which you guys already got to see. But even with these 2 rogues, it's actually quite crazy what you can do with Angrath. So Anowon is going to make it so that all of your rogue creatures get +2/+2. The Soaring Thought Thief is going to make it so that as long as your opponent has 10 cards in their graveyard, all of your rogue creatures are going to get +3/+3 and unblockable. And on top of that, the Soaring Thought Thief is going to make it so that when a rogue creature you control attacks, you destroy the top 2 cards of your opponent's library. Meaning that if you've got 3 rogues down on the battlefield, that's an additional 6 cards that you're going to be able to mill, or an additional 36 damage that you're going to be able to do with that. So one of my patrons, Andrew Von Merrily, was like, "What, Nalthazar, why aren't you using Soaring Thought Thief," right? Because I was originally using Robber of the Rich. He was like, you should totally use that. Check that card out. So I checked it out, and he was completely right. It's definitely the best pairing here in this deck with Anowon. The other rogue, the Black Bloom Rogue, I really like because it is going to have the land forming ability to make another black gem converting land, which means that we're going to be able to get to our 3rd ability a little bit more consistently, and that's really important with this. You absolutely need to be able to get to your 3rd ability quickly. And then it also has, as long as your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, it's going to get +4/+0. So between the Black Bloom Rogue, which is able to get to 12 power between its mill, the Soaring Thought Thief mill, and the Anowon boost, so that's going to be 12 power from that rogue. You're going to be getting another 8 power from the Soaring Thought Thief, 7 power from the Soaring Thought Thief, and then you're going to be getting 8 power from Anowon. You're looking at 8, 7, and 12, which is going to be a grand total of 27, right? So that's 27 damage that you're going to be doing, and then that's going to be another times 6 to that 27. When you attack your opponent, if you've got all the different pieces out and functioning, as I have right here, except for the fact that Tamio was a jerk and weakened my poor little guy. And so that 27 times 6 is going to be 120, 162. So that's going to be an extra 162 that you're going to be doing on top of your 27 damage. And there is no walker that's going to be able to survive 162 damage to the face plus that other 27, which I guess I should just say is 189. So 189 damage for having no reinforcements, just these 3 creatures out, is quite phenomenal. It's lots of good whappies. Oh, and I don't think I factored in the extra 6 cards that you mill, right? Because you mill another 6 for 36. So that's 189. You add another 36. And that's going to be 225, I think. I think you do like 225. So 225 damage is a lot of damage, guys. It's a lot of damage. So this is where I think Anowon shines the most. I'm going to go ahead and play one more match with this. But I feel like it shines the most here just because you're able to put out so very much damage with it. Now, that being said, you do absolutely need to build around it. I imagine that as we get more cards in Standard, as more sets come in, we'll probably have some more things that we can do with our opponent's graveyards. But at the moment, there really isn't a whole lot that we can do with our opponent's graveyard. And so while Anowon works with all of the other rogues in that they all have like mill, or they have like with Zareth-san where you get to steal stuff from their graveyard, it's just like, it's not like, there's some kind of inverse beacon bolt or something that's like, do damage to your opponent equal number of cards in their graveyard or something, which would be actually super sweet. So The power of this bundle is really kind of limited to if you have Angrath or not. That's really what it comes down to for me, because this is so incredibly powerful in Angrath, and then outside of Angrath, everything apart from the Crypt of Agadim is more of like a gimmicky card, where there are other things that I would probably use instead of one of them. But once again, with Angrath, you create this absolutely savage beast train of a deck that doesn't require too much in the way of cards, and then you can smack down on your opponents. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, my dude, you're running a bunch of other mythics here. You're running Ruinous Ultimatum, Whirlwind of Thought, and Escape to the Wilds. Do I need those cards? No, you don't. I'm just running them because those are sort of like mainstays in a lot of my decks. I'm very comfortable playing with those cards. I like them a lot. But you could very well go ahead and use other cards. You don't need to run those big heavy mythics for this bundle to work for you. And that's one of the other cool things about the bundle, is that regardless of what your collection size is, you're still going to be able to get value out of the bundle, because if you've got pretty much everything, then it's just sort of like a new fun thing, flavor of the month for you to try out. And then you put it with Angrath, and you get to have some laughable moments as you do way more damage than you feel like you should be allowed to do with creatures that have like a base power of 2, 3, and 3, right? Like you've got base power here of what, 5, 7, 8. Yeah, you got a base power of 8, and with no reinforcements, you're doing 225 damage with that base power 8 in creatures, which is super amusing. But if you're a newer player, then all of these are going to actually just feel really, really strong to you, because you're going to have solid control from the Enigma Thief. You're going to have Anowon, which is going to be buffing up the Enigma Thief. You're going to be getting extra card draw out of it because Anowon helps you draw some cards. You're going to be able to use some of the other rogues that you've been probably picking up from some of your packs from events. And so there's definitely a lot that you can do with this. As we close out this match against Tamiyo stands no chance. It's very, very done. That Blackborn rogue is enough to go splat, right? So she's done. So let's talk about my final impressions of the bundle, thoughts, etc. So for a conclusion of my thoughts on the bundle, I think that the bundle consists of a lot of cards that are really fun to play with. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, it feels kind of like a flavor of the month sort of bundle, where you would use a lot of the cards for the next month or so as you try out different things with them. They're definitely fun to play with. Crypt of Agadim is an absolutely essential card to have in your collection. But they aren't cards that are going to warp the meta and make you feel like you're totally missing out if you don't have them. Now, I want to say I did actually get to do something really cool with this bundle, and so I had a lot of extra fun playing with it, and that is I got this bundle a few days before it came out, and this was actually the first time that Octagon let me put one of these bundles into the training grounds or a PvP event before the bundle became available to other players. I say other PvP events, that's not true, just training grounds. I wasn't allowed to put it anywhere else. But the idea was that I got to play with it. I got to play against decks that people put together, which is a much better way of gauging whether or not a bundle is good than putting it through the story ringer. And so I got to put it up against people's decks, but that also means that if you got to play against me over the course of the past week in the training grounds, then you actually got to go up against this bundle and see it in action. You got to have a little sneak peek. So if you are interested in that in the future, please leave a comment down below. I know that Octagon tends to watch a lot of my videos, and so that could be useful information for them. I know that for me as a content creator, it was really cool to be able to sort of like have this sneak peek with the bundle where I got to try and put together a whole bunch of different decks and then put it into the training grounds so that you guys could check it out and so that I could get a better feel for it. So if you went up against any of my Bolas creations, if you went up against Kaya, if you went up against Angrath, then in this past week, then you got to go ahead and face off against Anowon. If you did go up against me, go ahead and leave that in the comments too. I'm interested to see how many people actually got matched up against me that watch my videos and that got to actually see this sneak peek. So that's, yeah, I mean, that really is what I mentioned earlier is by and large, though, my general opinion on the bundle. It's fun. It's not absolutely essential. Crypt of Agadim, you do want to get your hands on at some point. So you'll have to determine for yourself if this is one that you're going to want to pick up for yourselves. Thank you guys so much as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.